The day Howard Stark's heart finally gave out was the same day Olivia Wilson discovered two life-changing truths. She was 8 weeks pregnant, and her husband was leaving her. Hello, beautiful people. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you're watching from. Are you doing well? I've got quite the emotional journey to share with you today. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, now's the perfect moment to hit that button. You won't want to miss what happens next in this unbelievable true story of betrayal, secret wealth, and sweet, sweet karma. Olivia stood frozen in the sterile hospital hallway, the paper with her positive pregnancy results crumpled in her trembling hand. Her father's personal effects, a worn leather wallet, a simple stainless steel watch, and a house key, sat in a plastic bag on the chair beside her. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. Massive coronary event. Nothing they could do. Peaceful passing. But it was the notification that had just lit up her phone that made her knees finally buckle. Jack, asterisk, we need to talk tonight. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. Asterisk, she sank to the cold tile floor, her black dress pooling around her like spilled ink. At 32, Olivia had always been the responsible one, the planner, the woman who had it all figured out. Today, the universe seemed determined to prove her wrong. Mrs. Bourne, a nurse appeared, concern etching her features. Can I get you some water? Olivia looked up, her eyes dry but burning. It's still Wilson. I kept my maiden name, a decision that now felt eerily prophetic. And yes, water would be nice. Through the window, she could see rain beginning to fall over San Francisco, sheets of it washing down the glass like tears she was too shocked to cry. Her father, humble, kind Howard, had lived in the same modest 2-bedroom home for 30 years. He wore the same 5 sweaters in rotation, drove a 15-year-old Toyota, and clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. Yet he'd always seemed content, peaceful even. She'd never questioned why a former business consultant lived so frugally. She'd simply admired his lack of materialism. Her phone buzzed again. Jack, asterisk, I'll come by at 8 to get some things. We can talk then. Asterisk, Olivia's hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach. How could she tell him now? Would it even matter? The Jack she thought she knew, charming, ambitious Jack with his perfect smile and promises of forever, wouldn't walk away from his pregnant wife on the day her father died. But perhaps she'd never really known him at all. The nurse returned with water and a kind smile. Is there someone I can call for you, honey? Olivia shook her head. No, thank you. The truth was, there wasn't anyone. Her mother had passed when she was 12. Her closest friend had moved to London last year, and the person she would normally call in a crisis was currently typing out divorce plans via text message. She gathered her father's belongings and stood, smoothing her dress with one hand. She had exactly 6 hours before she would face her husband. 6 hours to process that she was now fatherless, soon to be divorced, and carrying a child that would be born into a broken home. The rain had intensified by the time Olivia pulled into the driveway of her father's modest home in the Richmond district. She sat in her car, watching water cascade down the windshield, obscuring the little blue house where she'd grown up. Inside were 30 years of memories, thousands of conversations over simple dinners, and countless life lessons delivered in her father's gentle, measured voice. What am I supposed to do now, Dad? She whispered. As if in answer, her phone rang. The screen displayed a name she didn't recognize. Arthur Hamilton. Hello, she answered, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears. Ms. Wilson? This is Arthur Hamilton, your father's attorney. I'm terribly sorry for your loss. I understand this is an inappropriate time, but there are some urgent matters regarding your father's estate that require immediate attention. Olivia frowned. Estate? Her father had the house, which she assumed had a mortgage, and little else. I was planning to meet with the funeral home tomorrow, she said. That won't be necessary, Hamilton replied, his tone softening. Your father made extensive arrangements some time ago. Everything has been taken care of. However, there's a reading of the will scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. in my office. It's imperative that you attend. Something in his voice made her pulse quicken. Is there a problem? No problem at all. But there are things about Howard that you don't know. Things he wanted revealed only after his passing. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. What things? I'm afraid I can't discuss that over the phone. Will you be able to attend tomorrow? Your husband is welcome, of course, though your father specified that certain information be shared with you alone first. She thought of Jack, of the text messages burning in her phone of the conversation awaiting her at home. "I'll be there alone." As she hung up, Olivia noticed a silver Porsche pulling up across the street. A woman emerged, tall, blonde, wearing a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than Olivia's monthly salary. She opened an umbrella and stood watching the house, watching Olivia with an expression that might have been curiosity or perhaps something darker. Olivia's phone buzzed one final time. "Jack, Veronica's coming with me tonight. I thought it would be better to be honest about everything at once." And suddenly, with perfect clarity, Olivia understood exactly who was standing across the street in the rain. What secrets had her father kept? And how had her life shattered so completely in a single afternoon? Olivia's hands shook as she inserted the key into her father's front door. Behind her, the blonde woman, Veronica, remained stationed under her umbrella across the street, a silent sentinel marking the collapse of Olivia's marriage. The house smelled like him, books, coffee, and that subtle hint of Old Spice he'd worn since forever. Olivia moved through the familiar rooms, her fingers tracing the spines of his beloved hardcovers. The wooden chess set permanently set up by the window, the framed photo of her mother that had never moved from its place of honor on the mantel. "You wouldn't believe what's happening, Dad," she whispered to the empty house. "I don't think I believe it myself." For as long as Olivia could remember, her greatest fear had been ending up alone. It was why she'd worked so hard at her marriage, even when Jack grew distant 18 months ago. It was why she'd suggested they try for a baby, hoping it might rekindle the connection they'd once had. Now, cruelly, both her father and husband had left her on the same day, and she was carrying the child she'd wanted so desperately, but under circumstances she'd never imagined. Her phone chimed with a text from Eliza, her co-worker at the architectural firm where Olivia had built a respectable career designing sustainable office spaces. "Eliza, Asterisk just heard about your dad. I'm so sorry. Do you need anything?" Asterisk Olivia started typing, "I'm fine," automatically, then stopped. The lifetime habit of self-sufficiency, of never burdening others, suddenly felt like a prison she'd built around herself. "Olivia, Asterisk Jack's leaving me. Today of all days. And I'm pregnant." Asterisk the response came almost instantly. "Eliza, Asterisk I'm coming over. Where are you?" Asterisk Olivia sent her father's address, feeling a tiny spark of relief flicker in her chest. She wandered into Howard's study, the room where he'd spent most of his time in retirement. His desk was meticulously organized, papers stacked neatly, pens lined up precisely, a single leather-bound journal centered on the blotter. She ran her fingers over the journal's worn cover, hesitating before opening it. Inside were pages of her father's distinctive handwriting, but not the personal reflections she'd expected. Instead, there were columns of numbers, coded notations, and references to companies and investments she'd never heard him mention. Most entries had dates from years ago, but the final entry was from just 3 days earlier. At the bottom of that page was a single line that made her breath catch. Asterisk all tests complete. Olivia will be protected now. Asterisk the doorbell rang, startling her. She quickly returned the journal to its place and went to answer, expecting Eliza. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with Detective Tony Stark of the SFPD, her father's oldest friend and her godfather. "Liv," he said, his weathered face creased with grief as he pulled her into a bear hug. "I just heard." She clung to him, finally allowing tears to fall. Tony had been a constant presence throughout her life, attending her graduation, walking her down the aisle when she married Jack, checking in on Howard regularly. If anyone might know what her father had been hiding, it would be Tony. "Come in," she said, leading him to the kitchen where she mechanically began making coffee. "Did you know he was sick?" "He never said anything." Tony shook his head, settling his substantial frame into a chair at the kitchen table. "Howard was the most private man I've ever known. But he did ask me to check in on you today, specifically. Called me yesterday and made me promise." Olivia nearly dropped the coffee pot. "He knew he was going to die?" "I don't think so. But he was—" Tony searched for the right word. "Preparing for something. He's been different these past few months. More urgent, like a man with a deadline." Before she could press further, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Eliza Parker, arms laden with a bottle of wine, a pint of ice cream, and a fierce expression of loyalty. "I brought reinforcements," she announced, marching into the kitchen and setting down her offerings. "Oh, hello," she added, spotting Tony. After introductions, the three of them sat at Howard's kitchen table, the same table where Olivia had done her homework, where she told her father she was engaged, where they'd shared their last meal just 3 days ago. The normalcy of the setting made the upheaval of her life feel even more surreal. "Jack's coming by at 8, Olivia finally said. With her, Veronica Callahan, Tony supplied, his expression darkening. "I ran a background check on her 6 months ago." Olivia stared at him. "You what?" Tony had the grace to look slightly ashamed. "Howard asked me to. Said he was concerned about Jack's new business associate. She's 36, divorced twice, works in commercial real estate development. Makes a lot of money, spends even more. And you didn't think to tell me?" Olivia asked, her voice rising. "It wasn't my place, Liv. Howard wanted to handle it his way. He said he was—" Tony paused again, choosing his words carefully. "Managing the situation." "Managing what situation?" "That my husband was having an affair." "I think there's more to it than that," Tony said quietly. Howard seemed to think Veronica was after something specific. He was monitoring the situation. Eliza, who had been quietly taking this all in, finally spoke. "Wait, your mild-mannered, coupon-clipping father was running counter-surveillance on your husband's mistress? With police help? Why?" It was the question Olivia had been asking herself since the strange phone call from Arthur Hamilton. What hadn't her father told her? What kind of man had Howard Stark really been? "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'm finding out tomorrow at the reading of his will." Tony nodded. "I'll be there too. Howard arranged it last month. Said he needed a witness he could trust." "For what?" Olivia asked. Before Tony could answer, headlights swept across the front window. A sleek BMW pulled into the driveway. Jack's car. "He's early," Olivia whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "Hey everyone, I know you're probably as shocked as I am by Jack's behavior. If you're enjoying this wild journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens at tomorrow's reading. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting." Tony stood, his expression hardening. "Want me to get rid of him?" Olivia thought of the journal, of her father's cryptic final entry. Asterisk, all tests complete. Olivia will be protected now. Asterisk, she thought of the baby growing inside her, of the life she'd planned versus the one suddenly thrust upon her. "No," she said, rising to her feet with newfound determination. "I need to face this. I need to hear him say it." Eliza squeezed her hand. "We'll be right here if you need us." As Olivia moved toward the door, she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Despite everything, she looked remarkably composed, her father's daughter to the core. Howard had raised her to face challenges head-on, to stand tall in adversity. Whatever secrets he'd kept, whatever tests he'd been running, she would honor that legacy starting now. She opened the door to find Jack standing there, perfect hair slightly damp from the rain, his handsome face set in what she recognized as his client meeting expression, sympathetic but detached. Behind him, Veronica waited by the BMW, not bothering with an umbrella now, as if embracing her role in the dramatic scene unfolding. "Olivia," Jack began, his voice practiced and smooth. "I'm so sorry about Howard. And about this timing. I never wanted—" "Save it," Olivia interrupted, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "I need to know just one thing before you say whatever speech you prepared. Was any of it real? Us? Our life together?" Jack's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing a flicker of genuine regret. "Parts of it. In the beginning. But we want different things, Liv. You're content with this." He gestured vaguely at the modest house, with a simple life. "I need more." Olivia thought of the journal, of Hamilton's cryptic words, of Tony's revelations. She thought of the baby, their baby, that Jack knew nothing about. She made a split-second decision. "Then go get more, Jack," she said quietly. "I won't stop you." He seemed surprised by her acquiescence, having clearly prepared for tears or accusations. "I thank you for understanding. I'll have my lawyer contact you about divorce proceedings." "I'm sure you will," she replied. "But Jack, you might want to wait until after tomorrow." "Why? What's tomorrow?" "The reading of my father's will." A flash of irritation crossed his face. "Olivia, I know you're upset, but trying to delay this with—" "What?" "The division of a mortgaged house and a 15-year-old car isn't going to change anything." From behind her, Tony's voice rang out. You'd be surprised what might change, Bourne. Very surprised indeed. Jack's eyes widened at the sight of the detective, then narrowed with calculation. Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow then. 10 o'clock at Hamilton's office. You know the address? Olivia asked, surprised. A thin smile crossed Jack's face. Veronica and I received our own invitations this afternoon. Apparently, your father wanted us there too. He hesitated, then added with an attempt at kindness. I'm sorry about Howard. He was a good man. As Jack turned to leave, Olivia called after him. You didn't really know him at all, Jack. I'm starting to think none of us did. She closed the door before he could respond, leaning against it as the BMW's engine started. Through the window, she watched her husband drive away with another woman, toward what he thought was a brighter future. What would tomorrow bring? What final message had her father left? And why had he wanted Jack and Veronica present for it? For the first time since receiving the terrible news of her father's death, Olivia felt a spark of something that might have been curiosity or even anticipation cutting through her grief. The offices of Hamilton and Associates occupied the entire 32nd floor of a gleaming financial district tower, a far cry from the modest law practices Olivia had pictured when imagining her father's attorney. The reception area alone, with its Italian marble and panoramic views of the bay, spoke of clients with considerably deeper pockets than a retired business consultant living in a modest Richmond district home. I think we're in the wrong place, Olivia whispered to Tony as they were led through a corridor of glass-walled conference rooms by a perfectly poised assistant. Tony shook his head slightly. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. Olivia had barely slept, spending the night alternating between tears over her father's death and anxiety about facing Jack again. After several hours of tossing and turning, she'd risen at dawn and carefully selected her outfit. A simple black dress that managed to be both appropriate for mourning and surprisingly flattering. If she was going to face her husband and his mistress, she'd do it with dignity. Ms. Wilson, Detective Stark, the assistant announced, opening the door to a corner conference room. Mr. Hamilton is ready for you. Olivia stepped into the room and froze. Seated at the massive mahogany table were Jack and Veronica, looking polished and expectant. Beside them sat a silver-haired man Olivia recognized as Gregory Chun, CEO of Horizon Developments, the company currently buying up properties throughout San Francisco for a controversial luxury housing project. But it was the wall behind them that captured her attention. Displayed in museum-quality frames were photographs of her father. Not the Howard she knew, but a younger version in tailored suits, shaking hands with world leaders and standing alongside tech pioneers at ribbon-cutting ceremonies. What is this? She whispered. Arthur Hamilton rose from his seat at the head of the table. He was older than she'd expected, perhaps in his 70s, with the bearing of someone accustomed to commanding rooms much larger than this one. Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming. Please have a seat. He gestured to two chairs directly opposite Jack and Veronica. We're just waiting for one more person. As if on cue, the door opened again, and a man about Olivia's age entered. He was tall with dark hair, wearing a well-cut suit that somehow suggested both money and a disregard for showing off. His features were striking rather than conventionally handsome. Intelligent eyes, strong jawline, an expression of focused intensity. Ethan Skywalker, he introduced himself, extending a hand first to Olivia, then to Tony. I was Howard's chief of security. His what? Olivia managed, but before Ethan could respond, Hamilton called the meeting to order. Now that we're all here, we can begin. First, allow me to extend my deepest condolences, Ms. Wilson. Your father was an extraordinary man and a dear friend. Hello, wonderful viewers. I can feel your anticipation through the screen right now. If you're enjoying this emotional roller coaster, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Drop a comment below sharing what you think is about to happen at this reading. I'd love to hear your predictions. Now, back to our story. Olivia barely heard the platitudes that followed, her mind still struggling to reconcile the photographs on the wall with the father she'd known. Howard Stark, the man who drove a Toyota until it nearly fell apart, who bought store-brand cereal and saved rubber band from newspaper deliveries, standing alongside billionaires and politicians. Which brings us to the reading of the will, Hamilton was saying, opening an elegant leather portfolio. Normally, this would be a straightforward matter, but Howard was very specific about how this should proceed. He removed a sealed envelope and a USB drive. Before I read the formal document, Howard asked that we watch this video message. He recorded it 3 weeks ago. Hamilton inserted the drive into a laptop, and suddenly her father's face appeared on the large screen mounted on the wall. Howard looked tired but determined, his familiar gentle eyes gazing directly into the camera. "Olivia," he began, his voice sending a fresh wave of grief through her. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and it's finally time for you to know the truth." He shifted in his chair, leaning forward as if trying to reach through the screen to touch her. "Everything I've done, every choice I've made over the past 30 years, has been to protect you. After your mother died, I made a decision that shaped both our lives. I walked away from my fortune, my companies, my public identity. I became the man you knew, simple Howard Stark, devoted father, living a quiet life." Olivia felt the room spinning around her. Tony reached over and squeezed her hand, a silent confirmation that he'd known at least some of this. "What you never knew," Howard continued, "is that I continued to build my empire in secret. Stark Holdings became Infinity Ventures, operating through layers of shell companies and private trusts. While living in our modest home and driving my old Toyota, I was building and investing in technologies and developments that have changed the world. I did this all anonymously, using intermediaries and proxies." The camera pulled back slightly, revealing that Howard was seated in an office that looked nothing like his simple study at home, sleek, modern, clearly the domain of someone with significant power. "I chose this path for one reason: to give you a normal life, free from the burdens and dangers that come with extreme wealth. I wanted you to develop your own values, to know the satisfaction of earning your own success, to recognize genuine love from those around you. In short, I wanted you to become the remarkable woman you are today, compassionate, hardworking, and true to yourself." Tears streamed down Olivia's face now. She was vaguely aware of Jack shifting uncomfortably across the table. "But I also needed to be certain you would be protected when I was gone. For the past 2 years, I've been conducting a series of tests, evaluations of the people in your life, assessments of your readiness to handle what's coming. Some of these tests may have caused you pain, and for that, I am deeply sorry." Howard's expression grew grave. Jack Bourne was one such test. When he began showing interest in a woman connected to Gregory Chen's organization, Howard nodded toward the CEO, who looked distinctly uncomfortable. "I had to determine whether his commitment to you was genuine or if he was being used to gain access to me through you. I authorized certain information to be leaked, suggesting I was merely a retired consultant of modest means, while simultaneously allowing rumors of my actual wealth to reach very specific ears." Olivia's gaze shot to Veronica, who had gone very still. "The results of that test became clear yesterday, I imagine," Howard continued sadly. "And while I regret any heartbreak this has caused you, Olivia, I hope you understand it was necessary to expose such disloyalty before the full extent of your inheritance was revealed." Jack's face had drained of all color. Veronica was staring at the table, her manicured fingernails digging into her palms. "Now, as to the matter of that inheritance." Howard straightened, his expression shifting to one of unmistakable authority. "Arthur will provide the legal details, but the simple version is this. You, Olivia Wilson, are now the majority shareholder and controlling interest in Infinity Ventures, a conglomerate valued at approximately $2.7 trillion. The room went absolutely silent. Olivia couldn't breathe. "Additionally, you inherit my personal assets, properties in 12 countries, an art collection, investment portfolios, and liquid assets totaling roughly $86 billion. There are, of course, some conditions and responsibilities attached to this inheritance, which Arthur will explain." Howard's eyes softened again. "I know this is overwhelming, my darling girl. That's why I've arranged for a transition team to help you, led by Ethan Skywalker, who's been my right hand for the past 7 years. Trust him. He will guide you through what comes next." The camera pulled in close again, Howard's expression intense with emotion. "I am so proud of the woman you've become, Olivia. Your mother would be too. You have always been my greatest achievement. Not the wealth, not the companies, just you. I love you more than you will ever know." He paused, then added with a hint of the quiet humor she knew so well. "Oh, and Jack? Gregory? Veronica? I hope you've enjoyed this little revelation. You may leave now." Arthur has security waiting to escort you out. The screen went black. The silence that followed lasted only seconds before erupting into chaos. Jack leapt to his feet, his face contorted with a mixture of shock and calculation. "Olivia, baby, we need to talk. Ms. Wilson is not available for discussions at this time." Ethan interrupted smoothly, moving to stand protectively near Olivia. At his nod, 2 security personnel appeared in the doorway. "This is ridiculous," Jack sputtered. "She's my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife," Tony corrected, rising to his full height, "and possibly a person of interest in an investigation into corporate espionage." "Sit down, Bourne." Gregory Chun, who had remained silent throughout, stood calmly. "Ms. Wilson, please accept my condolences. Your father was a remarkable adversary and an even more remarkable man. I look forward to continuing our discussions under these new circumstances." With a slight bow, he allowed himself to be escorted out. Veronica, her composure cracking, turned to Jack. "You said he was worth maybe a few million at most. That we'd get the house and some savings." "Not here, Veronica," Jack hissed, grabbing her arm. As they were led away, Jack looked back at Olivia one last time, his expression a complex mixture of regret, calculation, and dawning horror at what he'd thrown away. "Live, goodbye, Jack," Olivia said quietly, finding strength in the finality of the words. When the door closed behind them, she turned to Hamilton. "Is this real?" "All of it." The attorney nodded. "Every word. Your father was not just wealthy, Ms. Wilson. He was one of the richest and most influential people on the planet. He changed the course of industries without anyone knowing his name. And now, that legacy is yours." "But I don't know anything about running a trillion-dollar company," Olivia whispered, panic rising in her throat. "I design sustainable office spaces. I'm pregnant and getting divorced." "I can't. You won't be alone," Ethan interjected gently. "Your father assembled a team, the best in the world, to help you transition. You'll have time to learn, to decide how involved you want to be." "And the baby?" she asked, her hand moving protectively to her stomach. Tony smiled. Howard knew. He made special provisions in the will, a separate trust for his grandchild that rivals the GDP of small nations. Olivia looked around the room, at Hamilton with his kind eyes and decades of loyalty to her father, at Tony who had helped guard Howard's secret all these years, at Ethan Skywalker whose intense gaze suggested capabilities far beyond ordinary security work. "What happens now?" she asked. Hamilton opened the sealed envelope. "Now, we go through the formal will. And then, Ms. Wilson, you begin your new life as possibly the most powerful woman in the world." As the attorney began reading, Olivia's mind raced with questions. How had her father hidden this double life for 3 decades? What would this mean for her child? And how would she honor the legacy of the extraordinary man who had sacrificed his public identity to give her a normal life? One thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days after the reading of the will, Olivia stood in the private elevator of what she now knew was the Infinity Tower, a gleaming 70-story building in downtown San Francisco that her father had owned through one of his many shell corporations. The elevator required both a keycard and biometric scan to access the upper floors, where Howard Stark had secretly run his vast empire while maintaining his modest public persona. "Your father had this floor designed specifically for you," Ethan explained as the doors opened to reveal a stunning executive suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city and bay, while the interior featured an elegant blend of modern architecture and warm, personal touches. He began the renovations about 2 years ago. When he started his tests, Olivia said quietly, walking toward the massive desk that now belonged to her. It held a single photograph. Howard and Olivia at her college graduation, his arm around her shoulders, both beaming with pride. "Hey, beautiful people, can you believe this twist in our story? If you're loving Olivia's journey from betrayed wife to powerful heiress, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more incredible stories of transformation and justice." Now, back to Olivia's new reality. "He wanted to be certain you would be protected," Ethan said, watching her carefully. In the days since the will reading, he had been a constant presence, guiding her through initial meetings, explaining complex financial structures, and quietly handling the media frenzy that had erupted once news broke that the mysterious owner of Infinity Ventures had died and left everything to his previously unknown daughter. Protected from what, exactly? Olivia asked, turning to face him. I still don't understand why he kept this secret for 30 years. Why raise me in that little house? Why pretend to be just an ordinary dad? Ethan gestured toward a sitting area overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. As they sat, a staff member appeared silently with coffee before disappearing again. Your father made his first billion before he turned 30, Ethan began. He was a public figure, brash, brilliant, constantly in the spotlight. When he met your mother, Catherine, she was an environmental lawyer suing one of his subsidiaries. Olivia smiled despite herself. That sounds like Mom. They fell in love, married, and had you. Howard was still in the public eye then, and the attention was intense. Paparazzi following your mother to your preschool, kidnapping threats, constant scrutiny. Then, when you were 5, there was an incident. What kind of incident? Olivia asked, her heartbeat quickening. A kidnapping attempt. Howard never told you because he didn't want you to live in fear, but someone tried to take you from your private school. The security team prevented it, but it terrified your parents. They decided to step out of the spotlight, move to a normal neighborhood, enroll you in a regular school, live a more modest life while Howard ran his businesses from the shadows. And then Mom died, Olivia said softly. Ethan nodded. After the cancer took her, Howard had to decide whether to return to his public life or continue the charade. He chose to maintain the deception. For your safety, yes, but also because he saw how grounded you were becoming. How different from the entitled children of his wealthy peers. Olivia thought about this as she sipped her coffee. The enormity of her father's sacrifice, 3 decades of hiding his accomplishments, of driving an old car and clipping coupons when he could have owned islands, was almost incomprehensible. And now, she asked finally, what happens now? That depends on you, Ethan replied. You could remain in the shadows as your father did, appointing trustees to manage the holdings while you return to your old life. Or, his intense gaze met hers. You could step into your rightful position as the head of Infinity Ventures. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. Jax. Name appeared on the screen, the 5th message since the will reading. She ignored it, just as she had the others. The board is meeting tomorrow, Ethan continued. Your presence isn't required, but it would send a message. What message is that? That Howard Stark's daughter isn't going to disappear into the background. That she intends to claim her inheritance in full. Olivia placed a hand on her stomach, a gesture that had become automatic. And what about this? How do I run a trillion-dollar company while being a single mother? Something softened in Ethan's expression. Your father built an empire while being a single father. He believed you could do the same. The intercom buzzed, and Hamilton's voice came through. Ms. Wilson, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Jack Bourne has arrived in the lobby. He's demanding to see you and causing quite a scene. Olivia exchanged a look with Ethan, whose expression had hardened. Have security remove him, Ethan instructed. Wait, Olivia interjected. I need to deal with this sooner or later. She took a deep breath. Send him up, but have security standing by. Minutes later, Jack strode into the office, stopping short when he saw the opulence surrounding his wife. Gone was his usual confident demeanor, replaced by an almost frantic energy. He was unshaven, his normally perfect hair disheveled. Liv, he began, taking a step toward her before noticing Ethan's warning glance. We need to talk. Privately. Anything you have to say can be said in front of Ethan, Olivia replied calmly. He has full security clearance. Jack's jaw tightened. This is about our marriage, not your father's company. Our marriage ended the moment you decided to leave me for Veronica, Olivia said. The divorce papers should be ready next week. You can't be serious. Jack ran a hand through his hair. Olivia, I made a terrible mistake. I didn't know that I was worth trillions, she finished for him. No, you thought I was going to be destitute after my father died. That's why you left when you did, right? Veronica seemed like the better prospect. Jack flinched. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Ethan interrupted, his voice cold. We have the text messages between you and Ms. Callahan discussing how quickly you could finalize the divorce before any potential creditors came after Howard's assets. We have recordings of your meetings with Gregory Chun, where you offered information about Olivia's routine in exchange for a position at Horizon Developments. The color drained from Jack's face. You were spying on me? Howard Stark was protecting his daughter, Ethan corrected. The question is why you were meeting with a man who has been trying to acquire infinity properties for years. Jack's expression shifted from shock to calculation. I didn't know about Howard's connection to infinity. Chin approached me about a job opportunity. That's all. And Veronica? Was she just a job opportunity too? Olivia asked quietly. Something like shame flickered across Jack's features. Olivia, please. I know I've hurt you, but we can fix this. We have a history, a life together. Had, she corrected, and you threw it away. Jack took another step forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I'm still your husband, the father of any children we might have. Olivia went very still, understanding the implication. Get out, Jack. Liv, Ms. Wilson has asked you to leave, Ethan said, moving closer to Olivia in a protective stance. Security will escort you out. As if on cue, two suited men appeared in the doorway. Jack looked from them to Olivia, his expression hardening. This isn't over, he said quietly. You may have her father's money now, but you don't have his experience or his instincts. You'll need me before this is done. After he was escorted out, Olivia sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. He knows I'm pregnant, she said. Or at least he suspects. Ethan's expression was unreadable. Will that be a problem? It complicates things, she admitted. Jack could claim. Paternal rights drag out the divorce, create a medias circus. Or we could ensure he has every reason to sign the papers quickly and discreetly. Ethan suggested. When Olivia looked at him questioningly, he elaborated. Your father kept extensive files on everyone in your life, including Jack. There are indiscretions that might become public if he chooses to make this difficult. Olivia studied Ethan with new interest. There was something compelling about his quiet competence, his absolute loyalty to her father's legacy, and now, apparently, to her. In another life, under different circumstances, she stopped that thought abruptly. I don't want to blackmail my husband, even if he deserves it. Fair enough, Ethan nodded. But the offer stands if you change your mind. Their conversation was interrupted by Hamilton, who entered with a tablet in hand. I apologize for the interruption, but there's an urgent matter requiring your attention. Gregory Chun has made a formal offer to purchase Infinity's biotech division. Specifically, the patents related to your father's last project. What was his last project? Olivia asked. Hamilton and Ethan exchanged glances. Your father called it the Genesis Protocol, Ethan said carefully. It's revolutionary medical technology, potentially worth more than everything else in the Infinity portfolio combined. And Chen wants it, Olivia mused. Is that why he was using Jack and Veronica? To get information about Genesis? We believe so, Hamilton confirmed. Howard suspected Chun had learned about the project somehow and was trying to gain leverage through you. Olivia stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. In just 3 days, her entire understanding of her life had been upended. The father she thought she knew had been running a global empire in secret. Her husband had betrayed her for money and opportunity. And now, powerful forces were circling, testing her resolve, probing for weakness. When is the board meeting tomorrow? She asked without turning around. 9 a.m., Hamilton replied. I'll be there, she decided, and I want a full briefing on the Genesis Protocol before then. She turned back to face them, her expression resolute. If my father thought it was worth protecting, then so do I. Later that evening, Olivia returned to her father's modest house. Her house now, though it felt strange to think of it that way. Despite Ethan's offer to move her to one of Howard's many luxurious properties, she had insisted on staying here for now. It was the only place that still felt real. She was hanging up her coat when the doorbell rang. Cautiously, she approached the door, half expecting to find Jack on the other side. Instead, through the peephole, she saw Ethan, holding what appeared to be takeout bags. I thought you might be hungry, he explained when she opened the door. And I brought the Genesis files for you to review. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in Olivia's chest at the simple thoughtfulness of the gesture. Come in, she said, stepping aside. They ate Chinese food at her father's kitchen table, the Genesis files spread out between them. As Ethan explained the revolutionary medical breakthrough her father had been developing, a treatment that could potentially repair genetic damage at the cellular level, Olivia found herself studying him more closely. How did you come to work for my father? She asked during a lull in the technical explanations. A shadow passed over Ethan's features. I was military intelligence, then private security. I was hired to investigate a threat against one of your father's companies in Europe. When I uncovered the plot, instead of just neutralizing it, I traced it back to the source, a competitor trying to sabotage a product launch. And my father was impressed. Olivia guessed. He offered me a job on the spot. Said he needed someone who didn't just solve problems, but understood the bigger picture. Ethan's expression softened slightly. Over time, I became more than just his head of security. He trusted me with everything, including his most precious asset. The Genesis protocol? No, Ethan said quietly. You. Their eyes met across the table, and something electric passed between them. Olivia was the first to look away, suddenly conscious of the intimacy of the moment. It's getting late, she said, gathering up the empty containers. And I have a board meeting to prepare for. Ethan nodded, collecting the files. I'll pick you up at 8 tomorrow. At the door, he paused. Howard told me once that the measure of a person isn't how they handle success, but how they rise to challenges that seem impossible. He knew you would face this moment someday, Olivia, and he never doubted you would rise. After he left, Olivia wandered through the quiet house, trailing her fingers along the bookshelves, the chest set, the worn armchair where Howard had spent so many evenings. Everything looked the same, yet everything had changed. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, I know what Genesis really is, and Wychan wants it so badly. Meet me tomorrow before the board meeting. Come alone. Vjezdjichka Veronika. Reaching out secretly, apparently with inside information. Was it a trap? Or did Jack's mistress know something crucial about Howard's most valuable creation? As Olivia contemplated her response, she felt the baby move, just the faintest flutter like butterfly wings against her insides. Her hand flew to her stomach in wonder. What would your grandfather do? She whispered to her unborn child. The answer came immediately in Howard's steady, gentle voice. Asterisk trust, but verify. Always look beyond the obvious. And never, ever show your hand too soon. Asterisk, she picked up her phone and typed a single word in response to Veronica. Where? The coffee shop was 3 blocks from Infinity Tower, a small, unremarkable establishment that catered to the early morning office crowd. Olivia arrived 20 minutes before her scheduled meeting with Veronica, selecting a corner table with a clear view of both entrances. She wore a simple gray suit that concealed her barely there pregnancy bump, her hair pulled back in a sleek chignon that made her look both professional and unapproachable. Ethan had been furious when she told him about the meeting. It's obviously a trap, he'd argued the night before, his voice tight with concern. Chun is using her to get to you before the board meeting. Then I need to know what he's planning, Olivia had countered. And I'm not going in unprepared. Now, as she sipped her herbal tea, having reluctantly given up coffee for the baby, she touched the small earpiece Ethan had insisted she wear. He and a security team were positioned throughout the coffee shop and surrounding block, watching every entrance and exit. She's approaching from the east entrance. Ethan's voice came through the earpiece. Alone, as far as we can tell. Moments later, Veronica Callahan strode through the door. Gone was the glamorous mistress with her designer clothes and perfect blowout. This Veronica looked exhausted, her eyes darting nervously around the cafe before landing on Olivia. She wore a plain dark sweater and jeans, her blonde hair tucked beneath a baseball cap. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the seat across from Olivia. You have 5 minutes, Olivia replied coldly. Why am I here? Veronica glanced around again before leaning forward. First, I want you to know that I didn't know you were pregnant when Jack and I... She trailed off at Olivia's expression. Right, not the point. Look, I need to tell you something about Genesis and your father. How would you know anything about my father's work? A bitter smile twisted Veronica's lips. Because I wasn't just sleeping with your husband, Olivia. I'm a biochemist. I used to work for Infinity Ventures. Olivia felt Ethan stiffen through the earpiece. That's impossible. My father vetted everyone who worked for him. Under my real name, yes. Veronica Callahan is what I call myself now. 7 years ago, I was Dr. Victoria Creed, lead researcher on the original Genesis team. Victoria Creed died in a lab accident. Ethan's voice came sharply through the earpiece. There was a fire. We identified the remains. Veronica, or Victoria, smiled thinly. Someone died in that fire. It wasn't me. Howard helped me disappear when we realized what was happening. And what exactly was happening? Olivia asked, struggling to maintain her composure. Genesis isn't just a medical breakthrough, Olivia. It's Pandora's box. Victoria leaned closer. The protocol started as regenerative therapy, a way to repair cellular damage, extend lifespans, maybe even cure genetic diseases. But we discovered it could do so much more. It could potentially alter genetic code permanently, changes that would be passed down through generations. That's not possible, Olivia said automatically. 5 years ago, it wasn't. But your father. Victoria shook her head in reluctant admiration. Howard was brilliant beyond anything you can imagine. He solved problems other scientists couldn't even properly articulate. And when we realized what Genesis could do, he understood immediately how dangerous it was. So why fake your death? Why infiltrate my life through my husband? Victoria's expression darkened. Because someone else found out what Genesis could do. Gregory Chun. He offered me a fortune to bring in the research. When I refused, there was an accident in my lab. Howard helped me create a new identity, and I went underground. But I kept monitoring Chen's activities. When I discovered he was targeting you to get to Genesis, I had to get close. By seducing my husband, Olivia said flatly. By gaining access to your inner circle, Victoria corrected. I never intended. She stopped then, continued more quietly. Jack was supposed to be just an information source. I didn't expect things to go as far as they did. How convenient. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Victoria said, her voice hardening. I'm trying to warn you. Chen doesn't just want Genesis. He's already started implementing an earlier version of it. Olivia felt a chill run through her. Implementing how? Clinical trials disguised as standard therapeutic treatments at his private medical facilities. He's using desperate patients as guinea pigs, Olivia. People with terminal illnesses who will try anything. But the version he has is unstable. It's causing mutations, side effects that aren't showing up until months later. If this is true, why go to Chin at all? Why not come directly to me after my father died? Victoria looked down. Because I didn't know if I could trust you. Howard kept you completely separate from Infinity for your protection. And because she hesitated. Because Chun has my son. This revelation hung in the air between them. My 18-year-old son has a rare genetic disorder. Chun promised treatment with Genesis if I helped him. He admitted me to his private clinic, where they're treating No now. But I know enough about the protocol to recognize they're using an incomplete version. It might help him temporarily, but eventually, her voice broke. I need the complete Genesis protocol to save him. Olivia studied the woman who had stolen her husband and now claimed to be a presumed dead scientist with a sick son held hostage. Everything in her wanted to dismiss this as an elaborate manipulation. Even if what you're saying is true, why would I help you? Victoria reached into her bag and removed a small device that looked like a thumb drive. Because your father's death wasn't natural, Olivia. He was poisoned. Slowly, over months, with a toxin derived from the Genesis research itself, designed to mimic natural heart failure. And I can prove it. She slid the drive across the table. This contains blood work from Howard's last physical, which I obtained from his private physician. The markers are there if you know what to look for. Chun wanted Howard out of the way, so he could acquire Genesis through corporate takeover rather than outright theft. With Howard gone and you inexperienced, he thought it would be simple. Olivia stared at the drive, her world tilting on its axis once again. You're saying Gregory Chun murdered my father? Yes, and he'll kill anyone who stands in his way, including you and your baby. Through her earpiece, Olivia could hear Ethan giving rapid instructions to his team. Victoria glanced at her watch. Your board meeting starts in 40 minutes. Chun will be there, presenting his offer to acquire the biotech division. If you reject it outright, he'll know I've talked to you. What do you suggest? Olivia asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside her. Stall. Appear interested but cautious. Form an evaluation committee. Buy time while your people verify everything I've told you. Victoria stood to leave. I have to get back before Chen realizes I'm gone. Wait, Olivia said. If you're telling the truth, you're in danger. Something like resignation crossed Victoria's features. I've been in danger for 7 years. But my son doesn't have much time left. This is my last chance to save him. As Victoria walked away, Ethan's voice came through the earpiece. We're tracking her. and I've already sent the drive to our lab for authentication. Olivia sat frozen, processing everything she'd just heard. If Victoria was telling the truth, her father had been murdered. The Genesis Protocol was far more significant and dangerous than anyone had indicated. And the man who killed her father would be sitting across from her at the board meeting, expecting her to be an inexperienced, easily manipulated heiress. "I need to see the Genesis lab," she said suddenly. Now, before the meeting. 30 minutes later, Olivia stood in a state-of-the-art laboratory deep beneath Infinity Tower. According to Ethan, only 5 people had access to this facility, and 3 of them were now dead, including her father. Howard maintained personal oversight of Genesis for the past 7 years, Ethan explained as they moved through the pristine white space. After the incident with Dr. Creed, or Victoria, if that story checks out, he compartmentalized all research. No single researcher knew the entire protocol. Hey, amazing viewers! This story is about to take an even more dramatic turn. If you're loving these shocking revelations, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more incredible twists and turns. Now, let's see what Olivia discovers in her father's secret lab. Olivia approached a sealed glass door at the far end of the lab. Beyond it, she could see what appeared to be a hospital room. "What's in there?" Ethan hesitated before placing his palm on a scanner. The door slid open. "This is what your father called the Genesis chamber. It's where the final integration of the protocol takes place." Inside was a single hospital bed surrounded by advanced medical equipment. The bed was empty, but something about the room made Olivia's skin prickle with unease. "Has it been used?" she asked. "Once," Ethan replied. "By your father." Olivia turned to him sharply. "What?" Ethan's expression was grave. Howard was diagnosed with a degenerative heart condition 3 years ago. He was told he had perhaps 5 years to live. He accelerated the Genesis research, hoping to perfect it in time. Did it work? The initial results were promising. His condition stabilized, even improved. But about 6 months ago, he began showing signs of rapid deterioration. Around the time Victoria claims the poisoning began, Olivia murmured. "If she's telling the truth," Ethan emphasized. "We still don't know that." Olivia moved to a workstation where a sophisticated computer system displayed complex molecular structures. "Is this Genesis?" "Part of it. The complete protocol exists only in your father's private server, accessible by his biometric signature, or..." Ethan paused. "Or what?" "Or yours. He encoded your DNA as a secondary access key." Olivia stared at him. "He expected me to continue his work. He hoped you would." Ethan's expression softened slightly. "He told me once that while he had created Genesis, only you would know what to do with it." Before she could respond, an alert sounded on Ethan's phone. He checked it, his expression darkening. "The board is assembling. We need to go." As they rode the elevator up to the executive level, Olivia felt a strange calm settling over her. If Victoria was right, she was about to face her father's murderer across a conference table. If Victoria was lying, well, that would mean different, but equally complex problems. "What's your assessment of Victoria's story?" she asked Ethan. He considered carefully. "The timeline matches what we know. Dr. Victoria Creed was brilliant, one of the original architects of Genesis. Her death was convenient, and Chun has been suspiciously interested in our biotech division for years. But trusting the woman who is sleeping with your husband requires a significant leap of faith." Olivia nodded. "I don't trust her, but I'm starting to think my father might have." The board meeting was already underway when they arrived. 12 people sat around the massive table. Aging men in expensive suits for the most part, with 2 women who appeared to be in their 60s. At the head of the table sat Gregory Chun, smiling confidently as he rose to greet her. "Ms. Wilson, what a pleasure to finally meet Howard's daughter. We were just discussing my proposal for Infinity's biotech division." Olivia took her seat at the opposite end of the table, Ethan standing protectively behind her. She studied Chun carefully, his perfectly tailored suit, his manicured hands, the practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. This was the man who might have murdered her father, who might be holding Victoria's son hostage, who might be conducting dangerous human experiments. "Mr. Chun," she acknowledged coolly, "I understand you have a particular interest in the Genesis protocol." Something flickered in Chen's eyes, surprise, perhaps, that she knew the project by name. Among other promising technologies, yes. I believe my healthcare infrastructure could bring these innovations to market much faster than Infinity's current timeline. And why would that be a priority? Olivia asked, keeping her tone casual. Chen's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Time is always of the essence when it comes to life-saving medical breakthroughs. Wouldn't you agree? For the next hour, Olivia listened as Chen outlined his proposal, noting how carefully he avoided specific mentions of Genesis while clearly circling it. The board members seemed impressed by his presentation, nodding along as he described synergies and market opportunities. When he finished, all eyes turned to Olivia. She took a deep breath. Mr. Chen has presented an interesting proposal, she began. But before we consider any transaction of this magnitude, I'd like to form an evaluation committee to perform due diligence. I'd also like a complete audit of all biotech research currently underway at both Infinity and Horizon facilities. Chen's smile faltered slightly. That seems unnecessarily cumbersome, Ms. Wilson. My offer is quite generous and time-sensitive. Nevertheless, it's my fiduciary duty to ensure any transaction serves the best interests of Infinity Ventures. Olivia smiled pleasantly. Unless there's some reason you object to standard due diligence? The tension in the room was palpable as Chun recalibrated. Of course not, though I should note that the offer as presented is only valid for 14 days. Then we'll need to work efficiently, Olivia replied. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to meet with the board privately to discuss internal matters. After Chun and his team departed, Olivia turned to the board members. I understand you've all worked with my father for many years. An older man with silver hair spoke up. Some of us for decades, Ms. Wilson. I am Richard Harrington. I was with Howard when he founded his first company. Then perhaps you can explain why none of you saw fit to mention that the Genesis Protocol might have led to his death. A stunned silence fell over the room. I don't know what you've been told, Harrington said carefully, but Howard died of heart failure. A condition he'd had for years. A condition that improved after initial Genesis treatment, then suddenly deteriorated, Olivia countered. Did none of you find that suspicious? The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Ms. Wilson, one of the women said gently, Howard was very private about his health. He shared only what he felt we needed to know to fulfill our duties. And what about Dr. Victoria Creed? Did he share what really happened to her? Now the discomfort in the room was unmistakable. Harrington cleared his throat. I think, Ms. Wilson, that this conversation might be better continued in private. No, Olivia said firmly. No more secrets. No more compartmentalization. If we're going to work together, I need transparency. Starting now. After a moment's hesitation, Harrington nodded. Very well. Victoria Creed was not killed in that lab accident. Howard helped her disappear when it became clear that someone had targeted her for her work on Genesis. We never knew who that someone was. But you suspected Gregory Chan, Olivia pressed. We had no proof, the other woman board member interjected. Only Howard's intuition that Chan was somehow involved. Olivia considered this information. And now Chan wants to buy Genesis. Doesn't that strike any of you as suspicious? Of course it does, Harrington replied. But refusing his offer outright might force his hand. Howard's strategy was always to keep Chin close, make him believe he was making progress while actually revealing nothing of value. A strategy that may have gotten my father killed, Olivia said quietly. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Finally, Harrington leaned forward. Ms. Wilson, Olivia, if you have evidence that Howard's death was not natural, the board will support any action you deem necessary. Howard prepared us for this possibility. He left contingency plans. What kind of contingency plans? In the event of his untimely death under suspicious circumstances, Howard authorized the board to activate Protocol Lazarus. Olivia frowned. I haven't seen any mention of that in the files I've reviewed. You wouldn't have, Ethan said from behind her, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. Lazarus was compartmentalized at the highest level. Only Howard, myself, and 2 board members knew the full protocol. And what exactly is Protocol Lazarus? Olivia asked, a strange tension building in her chest. Harrington and Ethan exchanged glances before Harrington nodded, giving permission. Lazarus is a failsafe, Ethan explained. If Howard died before Genesis was complete, or if his death appeared suspicious, we were to activate a hidden laboratory where Howard had been working on an insurance policy. What kind of insurance policy? Ethan's expression was unreadable. Your father created a complete genetic and neurological map of himself. A backup, essentially, of everything that made Howard Stark who he was. If Protocol Lazarus is activated, that backup will be used with the Genesis technology to essentially bring him back. Olivia stared at him in disbelief. You're saying my father found a way to cheat death? To resurrect himself? Not exactly, Harrington interjected. The body would be cloned from his DNA, but accelerated to his biological age at death. The neurological mapping would then be integrated, theoretically restoring his consciousness, his memories, everything that made him Howard. Theoretically? Olivia echoed. It's never been attempted before, Ethan admitted. Your father was still refining the process when he died. And who would make the decision to attempt this resurrection? You would, Harrington said simply. Howard left explicit instructions that Lazarus could only be activated with your approval, after you were fully informed of the risks and ethical implications. Olivia felt the room spinning around her. In less than a week, she had discovered her father was a secret trillionaire. Her husband was leaving her for a presumed dead scientist. And now that her father had potentially found a way to return from death itself. It was too much. I need time, she said finally. Time to process all of this, to verify Victoria's claims about poisoning, to decide if Protocol Lazarus is something we should even consider. Of course, Harrington agreed. But I should note that there is a time limitation. The neurological mapping degrades after approximately 30 days post-mortem. We have just over 3 weeks left if you choose to proceed. As the meeting concluded and the board members filed out, Olivia remained seated, trying to process everything she'd learned. Ethan stayed behind, watching her carefully. You knew, she said finally, looking up at him. You knew all of this and didn't tell me. I was following your father's explicit instructions, Ethan replied, his voice gentle but unapologetic. He wanted you to have time to adjust to your inheritance before learning about Lazarus. And if Victoria hadn't approached me, if she hadn't claimed my father was murdered, I would have told you before the deadline. Howard made me promise. Olivia stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. The weight of the decisions before her was almost crushing. Whether to trust Victoria, whether to confront Shun, whether to attempt an unprecedented feat of scientific resurrection that might bring her father back, or might create something that only resembled him. And beneath it all, the constant awareness of the child growing inside her, a child who might never know its grandfather, unless Lazarus succeeded. I want to see it, she said. Finally, the Lazarus facility. I need to understand exactly what my father was planning. Ethan nodded. It's not here. For security reasons, Howard established the facility in a remote location. We'll need to fly there. When can we leave? Immediately, if that's what you want. Olivia turned to face him, studying his features, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. She found only steady resolve and something else, a depth of emotion he couldn't quite conceal. Why are you doing this, Ethan? Following my father's orders even after his death, protecting me, guiding me through all of this? What do you get out of it? For the first time, Ethan seemed at a loss for words. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more personal than she'd heard before. Your father saved my life once, literally and figuratively. I was in a dark place when he found me, doing security work that. He paused. Let's just say I wasn't proud of the man I'd become. Howard gave me purpose, a moral compass again. He trusted me when I couldn't trust myself. He stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. But it's not just about my debt to Howard anymore. It's about you, Olivia. You're extraordinary. The way you've handled everything thrown at you this week. Most people would have collapsed under half the pressure. Olivia felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby. I'm terrified, she admitted. Terrified I'll make the wrong decisions, that I'll fail him, that I'll fail this child. Without thinking, she placed a hand on her stomach. Ethan's gaze followed the movement, his expression softening. Howard always said that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in the face of it. And he believed in you completely. Ethan hesitated, then gently covered her hand with his own. So do I. The simple touch sent electricity through her body. For a moment, they stood perfectly still, connected by more than just the physical contact, by shared purpose, shared secrets, and something new and fragile growing between them. We should go, Olivia said softly, not moving away from him. I need to see Lazarus for myself. As they left the boardroom, her phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. Asterisk blood tests confirm poison. Howard didn't just die. He was murdered. Chen knows I met with you. He's moved Noah to a secure facility. I have 48 hours to deliver Genesis, or they'll start experimental treatment that will kill him. Please help. V** Olivia showed the message to Ethan, whose expression darkened. If she's telling the truth, Chen will be desperate now. He'll accelerate his plans. And if she's lying, then we're walking into an elaborate trap. Ethan's eyes met hers. What do you want to do? Olivia thought of her father, his secrets, his sacrifices, his contingency plans that defied death itself. She thought of Victoria and her son, pawns in a game they never asked to play. She thought of the child inside her, who deserved a world where power-hungry men couldn't murder with impunity. We go to the Lazarus facility, she decided. We see what my father created, and then we make Gregory Chun regret ever threatening my family. As they walked toward the private elevator that would take them to the helipad on the roof, Olivia felt a strange sense of clarity cutting through her fear and confusion. Whether her father could truly return from death remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. Howard Stark's daughter was no longer the naive, sheltered woman Gregory Chun had expected to manipulate. The game had changed, and Olivia Wilson was ready to play. The Lazarus facility was hidden beneath an unassuming ranch in a Montana wilderness, accessible only by a private landing pad and a biometrically secured elevator that descended hundreds of feet underground. As Olivia followed Ethan through the pristine white corridors, she couldn't help but marvel at the extent of her father's preparations. He started building this 5 years ago, Ethan explained as they approached a massive vault door. When the first Genesis trials showed promise, the vault required both Ethan's and Olivia's biometric authentication. As the heavy doors swung open, Olivia gasped. Inside was what looked like a medical suite from 50 years in the future. Gleaming technology surrounding a central chamber filled with a luminescent blue fluid. This is it, Ethan said quietly. The Genesis chamber. Everything your father needs to return is here. His complete DNA sequence, neural mapping, memories, everything that made Howard Stark who he was. Olivia approached the chamber, her reflection distorted in the curved glass. And all I have to do is authorize the procedure? Yes. But Olivia, Ethan's voice grew gentle. There's no guarantee it will work. And even if it does, the person who emerges may not be exactly the father you remember. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an urgent alert from Infinity Tower security system. She opened it to find surveillance footage of Gregory Chen entering the Genesis lab with armed guards. Behind them, Victoria was being dragged, struggling against her captors. He's making his move, Ethan said grimly. We need to get back. There's no time. Olivia's mind raced. Can we access the Genesis lab security systems from here? Minutes later, they were connected to Infinity's mainframe. On multiple screens, they watched Sean directing his people to download the Genesis data, while Victoria was secured to a chair, blood streaming from a cut above her eye. Where is Noah? Victoria demanded. You promised he'd be here. Chen smiled coldly. Change of plans, Dr. Creed. Your son remains at my facility until I've verified the complete Genesis protocol. Consider him insurance. Olivia turned to Ethan. We need to stop him and save Victoria's son. We're hours away by helicopter, Ethan reminded her. Chen will have everything he needs long before we can return. Olivia studied the screens, a plan forming. Unless we give him something more valuable than what he's stealing. Her eyes moved to the Genesis chamber. What if we offer him Lazarus? Ethan looked alarmed. That technology in Chen's hands would be catastrophic. We won't actually give it to him, Olivia clarified. We'll use it as bait. While he's focused on Lazarus, we can locate and rescue Noah, then trap Chen with evidence of everything he's done. She turned to face Ethan directly. But first, I need to make a decision about my father. Incredible readers, if you're on the edge of your seat wondering what Olivia will choose, hit that subscribe button right now. This story's climactic ending is one you won't want to miss. And subscribing means you'll never miss another thrilling tale on this channel. Drop a like if you're Team Olivia, and comment what you would do about Protocol Azarus. Now, let's see how our heroine outsmarts her father's killer. Olivia stood before the chamber, her hand hovering over the activation panel. To bring her father back would be a miracle, a second chance for them both. Yet something held her back. He knew this might happen, she said softly. He built all this, prepared for every contingency, even his own murder. Howard was always 3 steps ahead. Ethan agreed. But he also taught me that sometimes we have to let go. Olivia rested her hand protectively over her stomach. That life moves forward, not backward. With sudden clarity, she knew what she had to do. She pressed her palm against the scanner, gaining access to the system. But instead of activating the resurrection protocol, she initiated a different sequence, one labeled Phoenix in her father's distinctive coding style. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked. "Following my father's true final instructions," Olivia replied as code scrolled across the screens. He didn't want to come back. He wanted to give me the tools to move forward. The Phoenix protocol wasn't a resurrection procedure at all. It was a comprehensive security override coupled with irrefutable evidence of Chen's crimes. Within seconds, they had remote access to every Infinity system, including Chen's private medical facility where Noah was being held. "We've got him," Olivia said with grim satisfaction. All of it, the poisoning, the illegal experiments, everything. Working with precision, they remotely locked down the Genesis lab, trapping Chun and his men inside. Simultaneously, they dispatched Infinity security teams to rescue Noah and secure Chen's research facilities. Within an hour, Chun was in custody, Victoria was reunited with her son, and the Genesis protocol was safely back under Infinity control. 3 days later, Olivia stood in her father's study, now truly hers. The journal still sat on the desk, but now she understood its contents. Not just financial notations, but a father's legacy to his daughter. "The board approved your proposal unanimously," Ethan said from the doorway. "The Genesis protocol will be used exactly as you outlined, for healing, not enhancement, with strict ethical oversight." Olivia nodded. "And Victoria?" "Reinstated as head of research, with her son receiving the first authorized treatment. The doctors are optimistic." A comfortable silence fell between them. So much had changed in just 2 weeks. Jack had signed the divorce papers without protest once he realized the evidence against him could lead to criminal charges. Chun was facing multiple life sentences. And Olivia had found her place, not just as Howard Stark's daughter or Infinity's new leader, but as herself, a woman of compassion, intelligence, and formidable strength. "My father never wanted to come back," she said, touching the journal gently. "The Lazarus protocol wasn't about resurrection. It was his final test, to see if I would choose to bring him back or move forward on my own. And you chose to move forward," Ethan said, moving closer. "With help," Olivia acknowledged, meeting his gaze. Something had grown between them during this ordeal. Something neither was quite ready to name, but both were increasingly unwilling to ignore. "Your father would be proud," Ethan said softly. "I know I am." 6 months later, Olivia stood on the balcony of her penthouse, watching the sunset over San Francisco. Her hand rested on her now prominent baby bump as she felt her daughter kick, a strong, determined little girl already making her presence known. Behind her, Ethan approached with 2 glasses of sparkling water. "The Victoria Creed Research Center opened today. First patients start treatment next week." Olivia smiled. "A better legacy than resurrection technology, I think." "Speaking of legacies," Ethan said, nodding toward a package on the table. This arrived from Howard's storage unit. Apparently timed to be delivered today. Inside, Olivia found a handwritten letter and a small wooden box containing a vintage watch, her grandfather's, passed down to Howard and now to her. The letter was brief but perfect. "Olivia, if you're reading this, you've faced challenges I hoped you'd never have to face, and you've made choices I trusted you to make. I never wanted to come back. I wanted you to go forward. The best of me lives on in you, and soon in my grandchild. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in love, integrity, and the positive difference we make in others' lives. Your mother would be as proud of you as I am. All my love, always, Dad." As tears blurred her vision, Olivia felt Ethan's arm slip around her waist, his steady presence a comfort she'd come to rely on. The past would always be part of her, but the future, her future, was just beginning, and it looked brighter than she ever could have imagined.